I would now like to ask James Snyder, Associate Professor of Philosophy, Brother Sean Sammon, our Distinguished Alumni Award honoree, and Joan Gambeski, Class of 1983 and from the Alumni Association Executive Board, to please come forward. Dr. Snyder will read the citation honoring Brother Sean Sammon, and the Distinguished Alumnus Medal will be placed by President Yellen and Mrs. Gambeski.
Good evening and congratulations. Brother Sean Sammon, over your long and distinguished career, you have served your God and your fellow man as a leader, an educator, a scholar, and an advocate for social justice. Since graduating from Marist College in 1970 with a bachelor's degree in psychology, you earned a PhD in clinical psychology. You served as the Major Superior of the Marist Brothers Order, a complex organization of approximately 4,500 brothers across the world. As Major Superior, you encouraged the order to take a more global and multicultural view of its mission and established an important relationship with the United Nations Human Rights Council. You traveled across the world, sometimes to remote areas, to connect with the greater Marist community and to unify its mission. Your service to church and society was recognized with the St. Edmund's Medal of Honor, and in 2012, you were the first recipient of the Marist College Alumni Association, Dr. Linus Foy Outstanding Alumnus Award. You are the author of 10 books and many scholarly articles. Your publications are both academically rigorous and deeply personal. In your writings, you have consistently tackled some of the most challenging questions about the human condition, focusing especially on the significant changes that have taken place in the Catholic Church and in religious orders. Your work has ranged from the psychology of spirituality to the personal and spiritual challenges that we face as we grow older. In your work, you have blended the virtues of idealism and realism. On the one hand, you have encouraged us to dream, to take risks, and to be willing to change. You have inspired us to believe in ourselves and that the intractable problems we face today can be solved. On the other hand, you deny that there has ever been a golden age, viewing the world as a work in progress. Your biography of Saint Marcellin Champagne, the founder of the Marist Order, provides an insight into your idealism and realism. Champagne was shaped by the turbulent times of the French Revolution, but believed that love and education could change the world, a belief fundamental to your own life's work. It is fitting that you have returned to Marist as a scholar in residence. Education is at the core of the Marist Order's mission. In recent years, you have offered yourself and your wisdom to the administration, faculty, and especially students. You have forged a close bond with our students, frequently hosting them at your home for dinner and conversation. You embody Champagne's maxim that to teach students, you must love them first and love them all equally. In recognition of these achievements and for your embodiment of the principles of Marist College, the Board of Trustees proudly presents you with the Distinguished Alumni Medal.
Thanks, James, and good evening. Members of the board, President Yellen, and members of the administration, distinguished faculty and staff, family and friends of the members of the class of 2017. Thank you for the opportunity to share this evening with you and with everyone who is graduating tonight. And to the members of the class of 2017, a word of congratulations. You have worked hard, juggled a slew of commitments, achieved your goal. Take pride in all that you have accomplished. In a little over 12 hours, a crowd of a few thousand will gather to mark another commencement, that of the Marist undergraduate class of 2017. But that moment will differ in some significant ways from the one that we celebrate this evening. For the young men and women who will receive their diplomas tomorrow are just embarking on life. A first job, the tasks of renting an apartment, making a budget, paying bills, trying to make a life with someone, suffering through a crisis of faith, achieving a goal, or simply falling on your face for the first of many times in life. These experiences still lie ahead for many of them. Not so with tonight's class. For this evening, a more seasoned group of travelers have gathered to mark another milestone among many in the journey of life. For whether you are an adult student receiving your bachelor's degree or someone who has completed a graduate program on campus or online, you and your families have paid a price for this phase of your education that far exceeds tuition dollars. You have had to make sacrifices, and others have sacrificed for you so that you could see this day. Saturday's graduates, then, are marking a beginning. More than a few of us here tonight realize that what we are about is beginning once again. What you do have in common with tomorrow's class, however, is the challenge of writing another chapter in the story of your life. And it is to that task that I wish to address my remarks this evening. A story. Once upon a time, there was a warlord who rampaged through the countryside, ravaging and killing as he went. As word of his approach spread from village to village, the inhabitants fled for their lives. With a trail of carnage behind him, the warlord finally entered the last of the settlements and said with confidence, "The village is empty, I presume." At first, his lieutenant was reluctant to answer, but finally responded, "Not exactly, my lord. It's empty except for one old monk who refuses to leave." The warlord was furious and demanded that the man be brought before him. So the old monk was dragged into the village square. On seeing him, the warlord shouted, "Do you know who I am? I am a person who can run a sword through you without even batting an eye." And in response, the monk, looking the warlord straight in the eye, said quietly and without hesitation, "And do you know who I am? I am a person who can let you run a sword through him without even batting an eye." I tell this story because at times more than a few of us appear to resemble the warlord more than the monk. For the tale carries with it a lesson about character, about backbone, about those elements that are important in life. We can see full well that the old monk had nothing to speak of when it came to worldly power, material resources, or notoriety. But in fact, standing there in the village square, he ended up being the most formidable among the well-armed men who had assembled. For the monk had in his possession three virtues that made all the difference: a life's work, the capacity to love, and a lack of fear in the face of death. He had substance. He reminds us that power and strength do not always win the day. We live in a culture and society that is better at building skills than it is at building character. Skills are useful for accomplishing certain tasks. Character, however, is essential for living a life that has meaning. And what are the building blocks of a meaningful life? Looking at the old monk, I'd suggest three: finding your vocation, never being afraid to love, and learning to live with that elusive thief called death. A word about each. First, finding your vocation. Let me begin by pointing out that a vocation is different than a career, and it is definitely not a job. Rather, a vocation is something that summons you, speaks to your heart. A vocation goes hand in hand with your dream in life. Those with a vocation don't ask what they want from life. Instead, they struggle to answer these questions. What is life demanding that I do? How can I use my skills to make the world a far better place? So regardless of what you do, choose work that you believe is great work. And that means work that you love, work that calls you out of yourself, work that provides you with the means to pursue your artistic, humanitarian, and intellectual passion. You may not find that work easily, but keep looking. Don't settle. And if you start down one path and find it's the wrong one, don't be afraid to change. It can be refreshing to start over. Keep in mind also that life was never meant to be a ladder to be climbed. In reality, life resembles a jungle gym more than anything else. Be flexible and limber. You and I don't connect the dots in life by looking forward. We can only make sense of them in retrospect. Follow your heart even when it leads you to places that are unexpected. Second, never be afraid to love. Don't be taken in by the conventional wisdom of our age that strength and toughness are always assets, that selfishness is not just necessary but also desirable, that we are at our best when we act in our own narrow self-interest. Living for oneself, even successfully, does absolutely nothing to fill the void that exists inside each of us. In my experience, that emptiness gets filled not through strength, but through weakness and vulnerability. For success can lead to the greatest failure, that is arrogance and self-satisfaction, while failure can give rise to the greatest success, that is greater understanding and compassion. One of life's fortunate discoveries is that self-fulfillment is only achieved through self-transcendence. To find ourselves, we must lose ourselves, conquer our cravings to realize our passion. True fulfillment in life does not come from keeping our options open. It comes from putting down roots. For invariably, it's the people and things to which we bind ourselves that eventually set us free. So find your loves in life and give your heart to them. A commitment entails falling in love with someone or something and then establishing ways of living and acting that will sustain you when love wavers. Love has that wonderful capacity to plow open hard ground. It teaches you and me to be weak. It makes us vulnerable. But it is only when we are weak that we can come to see, forgive, and reverence the weakness in others. Saint-Exupéry said it well in The Little Prince. It is only with the heart that one can see rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eye. Third, learn to live with that elusive thief called death. When I was 46 years of age, I was diagnosed with a brain tumor. I remember the day well. I was living in Pelham, New York at the time. It was a Friday in January, and a light snow had just begun to fall as I headed to the doctor's after a week of medical tests. When I entered her office and saw the expression on her face, I knew that the news was not good. "Sit down," she said. "I will tell you what we have found, and then I will tell you what you must do." She went on to say that the test had uncovered a tumor of significant size, 5 centimeters in diameter, and it was located in the middle of my head. I could not avoid neurosurgery. Finally, she gave me some prescriptions and the name of a surgeon to contact. Then she looked at me and said, "There is one other thing I must tell you. Another year of life for this tumor will cost you your own." Now, lest you think this situation was entirely depressing, I must admit that there were some light moments. When I got home that evening, a dear friend from California was visiting. He asked me what the verdict was. I said I had a brain tumor. He came over and put his arms around me and then went to the liquor cabinet and poured 2 malt whiskeys, handed me one and took the other himself. He raised his glass as if to make a toast and said, "Let's start killing brain cells right now." That comment put everything into perspective. Death is very likely our single best source of life. We all share this destination, and that knowledge reminds you and me continually not to live someone else's life. Realizing that we're going to die gives many of us the courage to follow our hearts. And isn't that the essential spiritual question in life? On whom or what do I set my heart? Remembering that we are going to die also helps us to avoid the trap of believing that we have something to lose. Knowing that our time in life is limited forces you and me to clear away the old and make room for the new. It stops the incessant shouting of others from drowning out our own inner voices. Death helps us to commit to the journey, not to the outcome. Most of us have little more than 70 years of life during which we can make a difference, and we desperately want to do so. For the majority of us, that difference will not be one that is recorded in the history books. It can be as simple as making a difference in the life of a child. Nevertheless, we want to be sure that our sojourn in this world counted for something, improved the quality of life for at least a few, will live on in the memory of some. Live each day as if none were to follow, and ask yourself this question: if this was the final day of my life, what would I want to be doing? In summary, then, find your vocation. Never be afraid to love. Make friends with that elusive thief called death. All three will help you to become the person that you were always meant to be. But isn't that the goal of any education worth the name? Today, as always, graduates, that will be the legacy of Marist College. Thank you, and once again, a word of congratulations to the class of 2017.